Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare are ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be bringing back another edition of Big Deal, Little Deal, or No Deal. And be sure to follow the show on social media at the hashtag HITSM and our personal accounts at TechGuy and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 19 years of health ID content at healthcareittoday.com. So, you ready for fall?
I am actually. I am excited. Fall's always fun for me. I enjoy the fall colors, the changing of the seasons, all that kind of stuff. And traditionally, this is the start of a new university year, right? Like a new school year and stuff. So this feels like another spring. So I'm excited for the fall, and it's always fun to get to launch the fall conference season. So yeah. How about you? Are you excited for fall?
Well, I was going to ask you, is pumpkin spice a big deal, little deal, or no deal?
It is a no deal for me.
That's a no deal for you?
I
Oh,
do
wow.
not like pumpkin spice.
Oh, I'm not huge into pumpkin spice, but what I do love is the pumpkin donuts at Dunkin', and they only give them in the fall. So that's a big deal for me, but the rest of it I don't really need. Although, I love a nice, I love a nice carnival, corn maze, all of that stuff, the fairs, that's fun. So that's a big deal for me, and even a bigger deal for my wife, which is what really matters.
I just to me it is a scent of fall, which is nice. Like so I do enjoy I don't mind the scent of it. I just don't partake. Like I don't really like pumpkin pie. I don't like the pumpkin spice stuff, but anyway, it is definitely a sign of fall. So but yeah, I'm excited for today, John. We're gonna do this. We're bringing this back, which is fun. We haven't done this in a while, so let's just dive right into one of these first things. Like, so we're looking at four headlines, and we're going to be discussing whether it's a big deal, a little deal, or no deal. And first up is Quest Diagnostics selects Epic for Project Nova. And their Aura, Beaker Laboratory, Care Everywhere, MyChart, Resolute, professional billing and claims, like their whole thing, they selected Epic. Is this a big deal, little deal, or no deal, John?
Yeah, it's interesting because on the face you're like, wait, so a lab is buying Epic. Does that make sense? And then as you kind of listed it off, it's like Aura, yeah, that's designed for lab. Beaker Laboratory, literally it's the lab system inside of provide organizations. Yep, that makes sense for Quest. Care Everywhere, sharing the data between Epic and other organizations and that, yeah, that makes sense. My chart, the patient getting access to the lab results, yeah, that makes sense. Billings and claim for it, oh yeah, that makes sense too. So it's like, you look at that and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess it kind of does make sense for Quest to become an Epic customer. I think it's a big deal for Epic, the fact that they were successful at getting Quest, someone the size of Quest, to come after, to come and become a customer of theirs. Certainly, they've worked with them for years, creating who knows how many interfaces with them, sharing the lab data. And, if I'm an Epic customer, I'm pretty excited too, because that's probably means more seamless data from Quest, and I don't have to pay for an interface and have an interface. That will probably happen a little more seamlessly than it did before. And I think it's a big deal because it's part of Epic's reach into everything. So, it feels like everything in healthcare. So, kudos to them. It'll be interesting to see what LabCorp's move is, right? Do they follow suit and say, hey, let's just get on the Epic, train? Or do they say, no, that's a differentiator for us. We want to do something different. So that will be something to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna classify this as a little deal right now with a potential for a big deal later on. For because first of all, it's just an announcement. They're just starting. It's gonna take a while, right? Like Quest is a big organization to roll this out fully in their enterprise. I think it's gonna take a few years to fully get this there. I also think that Epic is gonna have to do a lot of work to fit it into that model, right? Because when we think of lab and we think of what they've done, I don't think they really built this for like the Quests and the Lab Corps of the world. I mean, they built it for the lab inside their, the hospitals and their healthcare facilities. So I think they're going to have to do a lot of twisting and turning of their application. I think the bones are there, and I think they can do it. I also think they're going to have to hire a whole bunch of people.
Mm.
Um, but but I think over time, as you said, it's going to be a big deal because it'll be more seamless in theory for patients and providers to work with lab results, sending lab requests, receiving lab results, billing of it would be a lot smoother. There's the potential here maybe of getting a single bill from your provider organization now instead of separate bills for all that kind of stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of potential here. So I think it could be a big deal if they pull this off much later. Right now, I just think nice. Congratulations to Epic. But like you said, I'm kind of expecting this kind of stuff was going to happen just because Epic seems to be owning everything. So I think it's a little deal right now.
I mean, it's fascinating to think about how that's going to play out because I think Quest has used a bit of a in-house custom solution, and it's kind of like when was it Alta got pulled out of the government organization, and I mean to be fair, Alta Vista, right? They were customized to the VA and DoD's workflow, which are unique. And I think that's the same thing for Quest, right? Like, so while, a lot of these things do make sense about why they could work, you're right. There's going to be some growing pains where the Quest users, the nurses, the front desk, although they're getting rid of front desk, it's mostly tablets these days. It feels like, they're going to be like, this isn't as good as the one before, and it's going to take a little bit of time for Epic to make that consumer lab model work, I think. And so you're right. There could be some hiccups along the way, but it seems like they're all in, and that's going to be a big change, and it is a big win for Epic.
I also think it could be a big deal down the road because, we know that there's epic detractors out there, right? And this is one more brick in the monopoly, right? And so if you're looking, to make a case of Epic being a monopoly, this is just one more reason that it's happening, right? So I think, on the flip side of all the wins that Epic gets, it's just it more as more and more healthcare gets on Epic, the monopoly just get bigger and bigger, and sooner or later it'll attract enough attention where people may take issue with a bigger issue with it. So, but for now, I think it's sort of for me, it's a wait and see. We'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah, visually, that monopolistic thing, this reinforces that in a
Yeah.
way that's going to be interesting to see play out. It is also going to be interesting to see from an information blocking standpoint. That means Epic better be sharing the data with all the other EHR vendors because they all integrate with Quest more or less, at least if Quest is in that area. And so, they're going to have to, and of course they can information block, but luckily the standards are there. So I actually think that's less of a deal because that's already happening. They're going to continue it on. They'll re-replicate it, but it'll be fun
Right.
to see it play out.
All right, let's get on to the next one, John. This is a big one, potentially a hot potato, but the 100K fee for an H-1B visa. Big deal, little deal, or no deal?
So it's interesting to think about because I think, Trump made the announcement $100,000 per year. It's just amazing. I can't even process this because it was like 1,000. It was under $1,000 for 3 years, by the way. Of course, you have to pay about 5 grand in legal fees, at least 5 to 10, depending on if it expedited, all sorts of things. But yeah, it's like now 100,000 per year. I I think it's going to be contested. I think that's very clear. I've already seen the lawyers looking for the defendants to allow them to do it, right? So will it survive? That's one question, right? If it goes into effect, it's actually going to be quite a big deal because so many doctors in healthcare are on H-1B visas, and guess who's going to be hurt the most? The rural organizations that have the H-1B doctors that are willing to come and work in your rural environment. That was how they were able to come over here. And so, and maybe the rural organization had trouble getting people to come to their area. And so that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know what he fully thought because it's also going to damage the tech companies. Now, how many health tech companies use H-1B? I'm interested to see how that plays out in the health tech world. in the broader tech world, it's a big deal. It's huge for them. And in many ways, it's kind of along those same lines of the rich are going to get richer. Because if you can afford to pay 100K per year for an H-1B visa for someone that has specific skills, if they have that unique of skills that you're willing to pay $100,000 a year, then that means only the rich can get those people, and not the startup companies, not the whatever. So yeah, there's a lot there. I hope it doesn't hold up, to be quite frank. I think it's a bad policy, and I actually don't mind the gold card to some degree. Like, fine, I could almost understand that one, but 100K H1B on everyone, and the fact that he said that all the tech companies loved it, I'd like to check that one. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. I, I think it's a big deal in the sense of it's putting a focus where maybe some focus hasn't been placed before, right? On the H-1B visas. So I think that's a big deal. I agree with you that it's going to impact most people negatively. Like people who have a lot of H-1B visas for healthcare workers, I think those can't be easily replaced with something else. It's not like you could home grow them tomorrow. Like I can't just
Mhm.
turn around and hire more nurses from somewhere, right? Like we're not minting them fast enough. So I think that's a big problem for healthcare workers because it's the reason why we have so many of them is because there's a shortage, right? It's not like, and I could understand maybe the rationale of maybe limiting H-1B visas because you want to hire locally and give people in America a chance to get some of these jobs. But in healthcare, it's just we don't have any, right? If we had them, they would already be hired, right? Um, in another way, I actually don't think this is going to impact the tech companies as badly, especially the larger ones. Not because they can afford the 100K, but because they're just going to go elsewhere. It's like, you know what? Okay, fine. It's going to cost me 100K extra per head in the US. I'm just going to set up shop in like Britain, or I'm going to set up shop in Canada, or I'm going to set up shop in Vietnam, right? Like, and I just won't bring them to the US. I'll still hire all these people and pay them lower salaries or whatever, get the skills I need. It just won't happen in the US anymore because I got to pay 100%, like 100K premium on it. So I
Yeah,
don't
and
think
that's what I don't understand, right? Like, I get that there probably are some scenarios where someone on an H-1B visa was hired over someone in the US, and there was probably some programmers or whatnot that were fired because they were able to hire H-1B visa people. There's probably some cases, but I think those are much more rare than what people think when you look at the volume of H-1B visas. I think it's exactly what you said. You're hiring people because you can't hire someone with that skill set. And then to your point, and I 100% agree, the choice isn't going to be, am I going to do the H100K H1B visa, or am I going to hire someone locally? No, the choice is going to be, am I going to do the 100K H1B visa, or am I going to hire someone, at another country where I don't have to pay that and still get that exact same skill set? Like, okay, now you just can't come over. Like,
right.
especially in this virtual connected world, like, why would we not? Like, why would you ever pay that if you can get that same person and then, have them get a visa to come over here every once in a while, or whatever, right? Like, anyway, I just think it's so misguided.
I think this is a classic case of government believing they're operating in a vacuum, like in isolation. Like I think in isolation, you can look at this and go, yeah, I can see this. Let's raise a tax essentially on foreign workers so that domestic workers have a better chance. And it balances the scale because you could argue that there are some cases where you could get away with paying someone less on an H-1B visa. And so you may want to balance that. Maybe 100K is excessive, right? But no country operates in isolation. What we're raising here is that well, they'll just go somewhere else, right? So all the other benefits of having that person in your country, the spending, the housing, the spending on food, and it's gone. It goes to somewhere else. So again, this doesn't help startups for sure because they probably wanted to bring that person in with their teams, which are based here in the US. But larger companies can just say, well, I've already got international operations. I'll just, rent some more office space over there. I'll put up a building somewhere else, and then they're over there, right? And instead of bringing them all to the U.S. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, it is just an announcement. We don't have any of the details, so who knows? But I think this is a big deal because I think it's going to, because the specter has been raised. I think people are already going to start to, okay, well, maybe I should hedge my bets now, right? Like, so let's start this process, even if it doesn't come in fully, even if it was only 12K, 15K, still a 15K I don't want to pay. So let's start figuring out how I can ramp up business in other places.
Yeah, and we've seen this in the tech community. They've been trying to get more of these H-1B visas, not because they don't want to hire locally, but because they can't get enough of the talent that they want and need to be successful. And that's why they've wanted these visas. And yeah, hopefully, I hope it gets crashed down. That's my view.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we're debating whether four recent headlines are a big deal, a little deal, or no deal. All right, next up, John, let's talk about this one.
Hey, Colin,
Revs.
I think you should take this one first. So,
Okay.
because this is your area, man. This is your stuff. So tell me, we just heard the announcement as we're recording today, which we of course recorded a few weeks early. But RevSpring has acquired Kyruus Health, and for those not familiar, RevSpring has a variety of financial products. Kyruus Health is kind of more on that digital front door, provider directory, etc. So very different companies. What do you think? Big deal, little deal, no deal?
Well, speaking from a personal standpoint, it's a big deal because we obviously I'm know a lot of the people at Kyruus Health, have been a fan of Kyruus Health for a while, so this is a big deal because I think it's a big deal for Kyruus Health. What but I also think it's a big deal because this is a bit odd for me. Like this came out of the blue, first of all. I did not think Kyruus Health was on the market or was
Mm-hmm.
interested in being acquired. I also think that when you look at RevSpring's portfolio, this is a strange one because it's not directly related to, on the surface anyways, to everything that they're currently do. So this is more of a broadening of their offering, which is not the kind of M&A that we typically see. Typically, we see vertical integration, right? So this one is a big deal for me because it's just a little bit out of left field. So, kudos to Kyruus. They built a great company, and Dr. Graham, has done a great job with the team over there and built a company. Um, and RevString is I know the reputation of the company, and everything seems very positive. So sounds like it's going to be a pretty good marriage.
Well, and RevSpring's really been pushing forward. They were acquired by Fraser Healthcare. They're a portfolio company of Fraser Healthcare. So, that makes sense, right? The acquisition, once you get the cash behind you, you often do the roll up. But you're right. I think it's fascinating that it was a horizontal roll up as opposed to a vertical one, which is really a lot more common in healthcare. So it'll be interesting to see how they merge the two. They talk about the complementary patient engagement payments platform. I kind of see that, right, in integrating the payments into into the website of the healthcare organization. That kind of makes sense. I'll be interested to see, right. What was it, it was shocking to me because I just didn't expect it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so to me, that was the surprising part. As I think about it more, I'm like, oh, it'll be interesting to see how they integrate those. And there is complementary solutions for similar audiences. So you can see some of that thinking there. So, I think both organizations have been successful. It's interesting, like you said, that now is when they decided to kind of combine organizations. RevSpring's been pretty aggressive, though. I mean, I know they hired Nicole Rojas, who I previously at Simpler. They've been making some moves. So I guess this is just another in that chess game that they're playing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, speaking honestly, like financial experience is probably one of the worst experiences that patients have. So maybe, RevSpring looking at that and going, hey, let's get ahead of this. Let's bring in a company that specializes in patient engagement and care. the provider directory, I still have to scratch my head a little bit to say like, how does this fit? Maybe some fit as I if I think about it a little bit more, but definitely on the surface, this was surprising, and I think because of that, for me, big deal. So yeah, definitely gonna be something I'm gonna be asking them about when I see them at health.
For sure.
All right, final one, John. Let's get to this one. AI, and not, I mean, we all know AI is a big deal, so that's not the question. The
Are you
question is,
sure?
yeah, I don't know. It's only the top topic again this year. But anyways, recently MIT has come out with a couple of studies that one in particular was the headline grabber of 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing, and that the other study was that ChatGPT is eroding critical thinking skills. This was a study done by looking at the EEGs of people's brain that used ChatGPT, that weren't using ChatGPT, and I had shades of that Nancy Reagan slogan from the 80s about this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs. That's kind of what happens. This is your brain and this is your brain on ChatGPT. So, are these studies a big deal, little deal, or no deal, John?
I think they're a little deal, and for a couple different reasons. Someone posted, hey, you got to understand this is eroding our critical thinking skills. And then they asked the question, do you think, they posted about the study and said, do you think this is they kind of said, is this a big deal, little deal, no deal? And I replied, I said, let me check with Gen AI and I'll let you know. But it's interesting, when it comes to that one, I think it may even be a less of a deal because everyone has said that for a long time. Did Google make us stupider because we were able to have access to that information? Not really, right? Like we still had to do search. We just use different parts of the brain and we use different creativity to be able to solve different problems. And to me, the chat GPT allows you to approach problems from a different angle and focus on doing it. But you still have to apply some creativity within that to get the results you want. For example, someone was talking to me and about like, well, why is chat gpt so stupid, it can't even count to 10. And you're like, well, no, you actually just need more creativity in the prompt that you write. If you were to say list 10 things that of why Colin Hung is great, it would be able to count to 10 just fine, right? Like, so it depends on how you prompt it, right? If you so I think you have to use different skills when you're doing it, right? I think it's worth thinking about and saying, hey, what does this future look like? But to me, that's even less of a deal. The other one is interesting, the generative AI pilots that are failing. First of all, there's a problem with pilots. Like, a pilot means you're not committed. And so you almost want it to fail. You almost are investing in it in a way that it fails. Not always true, but it often is, right? And so I think if they would have said 95% of generative AI efforts have failed, that would be a bigger deal. And that would be a big deal. But as it is, I think it's a little deal. Sure, we need to know how are we actually going to use this. But I think that, pilots are a bad test of whether it's effective or not.
I'm gonna go totally. I'm gonna say this is no deal.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why I say that is, first of all, I think the studies are cool. Like, I think they're well done. I don't think there's anything wrong with the study. I just think they're saying what we kind of all knew. Like, I don't think there's anything, you know, new here because with any new technology of this scale, of this hype, you're bound to have these kinds of headlines and reactions, right? When the PC first came out, right? It was like, oh my gosh, this is the death of math, right? Like the computer is going to do thinking for us. And we probably, basic arithmetic now is lost on some people, right? Like, why? Because I got a calculator in my hand. So I can't maybe do mental math as much, but can we legitimately say that the lack of mental math is causing a lot of societal issues today, right? Like,
Mm.
not really, because everyone has a phone. Like, we solved it by a different way to say, well, sure, these wonderful computers used to be like really expensive for you to own, but we got the price down so far, everyone's got one now. So maybe you don't need to know how to divide by 70, right? Or divide by these, like, And what are we suffering? So I agree with the study that maybe our critical thinking is eroding right now, but to your point, I think it'll be replaced with something else. Like because we don't have to do X, we can now do Y. Maybe we are going to be more creative. Maybe the fact that I don't have to learn how to code and yet I can still create an app will be, an explosion of amazing apps, right? Because now people are just going to be thinking something up, try it, and it might work. So I don't think this is a big deal at all because I think it's just reflecting what we kind of knew. And just specifically on the generative AI pilots, was recently at a conference where we heard from Dr. Justin Norden, who basically said that AI today benefits the individual very clearly, productivity wise and so forth, but it doesn't yet benefit the enterprise because it's not designed for enterprise use yet. It's designed
Mm.
for individual use. So I'm actually not surprised that the pilots at companies are failing because they probably thought it could help the company, but they didn't design the pilot right, right? Because it's really just benefiting the individual worker. So I think a lot of companies are maybe a little bit disappointed in like what it's actually yielding for them. So anyway, I don't think this is a big deal. I think we're going to be just laughing at these studies down the road, saying, "Oh yeah, not nothing."
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what's interesting is that if you're a person that would use ChatGPT so you could stop critically thinking, you were probably going to do that before anyway, right? Like you were going to create a lifestyle that allowed you to not have to think. You just have better tools to be able to do that, right? So I'm with you, right? If you're going to replace it with something else and you're going to use it to be creative in another way. It'll be interesting to see. I think this is part of the hype cycle of any technology. And I think what's interesting is that some people have said we're over the top and we're headed down. I think we're still on the early going up, and I think we hear that more and more. And during that going up cycle is when all the failures happen because we're still discovering how can it be used, and we're refining the product to actually work the way it should.
Right. Right. And just one thing that's on the back of my mind, and as a science fiction reader, this is like these tools will help humanity progress to a mean, right?
Mm,
People who may not have been as eloquent suddenly are very eloquent with ChatGPT. People who maybe not be as good with math can now do math, right? Like, and who couldn't
mm.
code can now code. So we're all getting to a higher mean. Like we're going to all be better than we were before when we didn't have these tools. But what that means is it's now more easy for you to break away from the mean. If everyone is at the same average, everyone's doing the same thing, now to stand out, it's actually, you're going to really stand out, right?
Hmm.
So in a weird way, how do you break the status quo? Can you beat the system because everyone else is depending on these tools? If you suddenly come across something, a different prompt, or even just you came up with something, on your own, you may be even further ahead because everyone else is just progressing to that mean and not thinking, out of the box as much. So that
Wow,
could happen
that's
as
a lot
well.
to think about, Colin. When's your sci-fi book coming out?
There you go. I'll have to get that published, John. Hey, thanks to all of you who tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community at healthcareittoday.com and on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung with my friend and Health IT collaborator, John Lynn. Thanks for listening and have a great week.